running from the Hooker and Mueller glaciers. You'll see that this water does not share Lake Pukaki's majestic blue, rather it is a chalky, milky grey. This water contains a type of sediment known as glacial rock flour. This is created by glaciers as they advance down the valleys. Millions of tons of ice grind against the side of the mountains and valley floor, reducing the rock bed into dust. This becomes trapped inside the ice and eventually is released into the meltwater. There is so much rock flour in this glacial water that it turns milky grey. The Hooker River flows out of the valley and joins with the Tasman River, which is out in the valley to the right. This is a larger braided river flowing out of the Tasman Glacial Lake. Eventually, all of this glacial meltwater and rock flour flows into the blue Lake Pukaki. Lake Pukaki contains a much higher concentration of fresh rainwater and snowmelt, so as the glacial rock flour begins to mix with these fresher waters, the rock particles begin to settle and separate. The larger particles sink to the bottom, while some particles are so fine that they remain suspended in the water. The blue hue of the lake water is caused by selective absorption and the scattering of white light. The rock sediment that's suspended in water gives it this cloudy, coloured appearance. After crossing the Hooker Bridge, we're in the Tasman Valley. This whole landscape has been carved out and shaped by glaciers, and most specifically by the Tasman Glacier, which you're seeing today. At the height of the last major ice age, 18,000 years ago, this landscape would have been nearly unrecognisable. Right here, we would have been completely frozen inside the Tasman Glacier, encased underneath 200 metres of ice. We would only be a third of the way down as the glacier delved another 400 metres below our feet down to where the true valley floor lies. The glacier filled this valley from one mountain range to the other, and at the end of the Mount Cook Range, it was joined by the Hooker Glacier and stretched as a super glacier over 100 kilometres down the valley, consuming the Pukaki Basin and ending roughly 10 kilometres further south than the Pukaki Dam and Highway. As the glaciers advance, they scrape and gouge into the sides of the mountain and valley floor, picking up millions of tons of rock and debris in a process known as plucking. This rock becomes trapped inside the ice and is broken up even more as it's swirled around by the moving ice crystals. Over millennia, the glaciers have completely changed the landscape of the South Island of New Zealand. Around 13,000 years ago, the world began to warm up. The glaciers began to melt and retreat back up the valleys. As they did so, they left behind the millions of tons of rock that was plucked from the mountains. This flat rock bed you can see in the valley is estimated to be 400 metres thick, hiding the bottoms of the surrounding mountains and creating this sparse and barren landscape. This abandoned rock is called glacial till. It's very porous and not very compact. Because of this, most of the 5 to 7 metres of rainwater that falls each year does not remain on the surface. Instead, it flows down through the holes in the glacial till and forms underground streams that find their way to Lake Pukaki. It's for this reason that there's little vegetation growing in the valley, as there's not enough topsoil to support the growth of the alpine fauna we find in other places of the park. The Hooker and Tasman rivers that we've seen remain on the surface due to the rock flour that's in the water. Over time, this rock flour collects in the gaps between the rocks and turns into a clay-like material. This clay creates a riverbed that allows the rivers to flow on the surface.